This one is about EV batteries. Now, EV batteries have come a long way. The first EV batteries were lead-acid batteries. They actually kind of held the position of the best batteries for a long time. What we're using now are lithium-ion batteries. The lithium-ion battery is probably the best thing out there now. I mean, there'll probably be things that change this in the future, but right now these are by far the best batteries. They put together a combination of things that works really well. Number one, they're pretty easy to charge. They have a lot of energy density. Energy density is the amount of energy a given size battery will hold, and they're pretty good. But there are things about these batteries that you have to watch. They don't like heat. There's no battery likes heat. All of them have problems with heat. And so they have to have a cooling system. That's been one of the big complaints about the Nissan Leaf since it came out, is it's just got an air cooling system and it's not terribly effective. It does try to protect itself, but you know, there are problems with it. Tesla does really good with their cooling, and so theirs works really good. The Chevy Bolt, which I have, has a liquid cooling system that seems to be pretty effective, but you do need to keep them from overheating. They also don't work at very low temperatures. That's why you'll find that these vehicles, if you leave them in cold temperatures, they will warm up the batteries when they get to a certain temperature, because a lower temperature does not allow it to release the energy back into the system as fast as it needs to do. So they need to be kept in reasonable temperature ranges. Now, I'm not going to go into the ranges they should be. I'm not even sure I know all of them, because different manufacturers don't really want to tell you much about it. But there's two types of lithium-ion batteries that you see a lot of. One is the 18650, which is using a Tesla, which looks like an overgrown AA battery. And the other one is a prismatic cell, which is kind of a rectangular cell that is enclosed in a metal box. Probably the 18650 is perhaps the best right now. At least the way Tesla puts them together, they seem to be. But the prismatic cells have some positives for them too. But mostly what we're concerned about with these cells is, how should you charge this battery? And how should you discharge the battery? Those are the two things with these batteries that you have to deal with most. Like most batteries, lithium-ion batteries do not like to be discharged flat dead. Now, we used to have the NiCads that had a memory, and we had to let them go all the way dead before we could charge them. That is not true with these lithium ions at all. In fact, they don't like being discharged completely. They want to run somewhere between 70% and 40% charge. It's where they shine the best. It doesn't mean you can't run them lower than that or higher than that. They will survive virtually all that, but it does reduce the battery life to a certain extent. So what should we do if we want to maintain these batteries as best we can? Okay, don't discharge it completely. Now, you're not going to have a choice. If you got 20 miles to a charging station and you're reading 20 miles on the gauge, you're going to keep going unless you want to wait for a tow truck. So let's let's accept the fact that we may have to discharge these things very low, but we're going to try not to. Now, charging to 100%. Now that's got a little more controversy to it. You can charge that battery to 100% every time if you want to. However, they don't like being charged to 100%. Well, take a look at the cell phone battery. They charge to 100% because cell phones, there's a lot of pressure to keep these battery lives as long as possible. And if you look inside a cell phone, the vast majority of the space inside the cell phone is dedicated to the battery. So they're going to charge it to 100%. Well, consequently, the batteries don't last very long. They do fail pretty soon. And I probably should talk something about cycles. Cycles is a charge-discharge cycle. And you see that with cell phones. Most people, don't charge them when they get to 50%. Sometimes they get down to 10% or 5% before you think to charge them. Well, that cycling does wear these batteries out. And it wears all batteries out. Your best bet, if you want the most number of cycles that you can get, is to never let it go below 40% and never let it go above 70%. Well, obviously that's not going to happen. The batteries would last very long. But what can we do to make this sensible for the way we do use these things? First thing is you have to have a car that's got a good sized battery in it. Because if you're running with something that's got maybe 85 miles worth of battery in it, it's going to be really tough to charge that thing below 100% because you don't have enough range to start with. So that's going to be kind of a toughie. If you can do it, if you know the fixed number of miles you're going to drive it, you perhaps can be within those limits. But it's going to be pretty hard. You're going to need one of the larger battery cars to really be able to work with this stuff. So I'll take the Chevy Bolt. Now, the Chevy Bolt, if it's a 2019, you can just set it for where you want it. There's a setting on the car that you can set it for 70%, 60%, 90, 100, whatever you want. But the earlier ones, the 2018 and the 2017, they don't have that. And the Leaf, which actually used to have it, has taken it away. Not sure why that happened, but on the Bolt, there is a way to charge that thing less than 100%. Now, when I say 70-40, probably nobody's really going to do that because that reduces your range a long way. But there is ways to get this thing, to get longer life out of this without going through terrible changes. So the Chevy Bolt has a hilltop reserve, which means it only charges to 87%. Okay. If I charge that thing to hilltop reserve whenever I charge it, I'm getting pretty close to that lower number. Now, the other thing about this overcharging is that if the voltage is too high, that means it's charged at 100%. If that voltage is too high, then it damages one of the anodes in the battery and the battery loses capacity. So what we want to do is we want to charge this thing up. Well, let's say I'm using that 87%. If I was to set that up so that it charged up to the 87%, but it did that with within maybe an hour or 45 minutes of when I was going to drive the car, like overnight. That would help in preserving the battery, because the longer that battery stays at that 100% higher voltage, the more damage is done to the battery. So, what if I was to take and just use a Hilltop Reserve, and there's an option in the Chevy Bolt for not making immediate charge, and just telling this thing, I want this thing to be charged up by, say, 7 o'clock in the morning. And if I'm going to be out there at 8 o'clock and go take this thing and drive it to work, then it's only going to be at that high state of charge for a very short time. So that's a way that I can get around this charging. It's not perfect, and I think Chevrolet should offer an over-the-air update to change some of the earlier ones, but General Motors has not been real good about that kind of stuff, and I don't expect them to do it. So this is a way you can get around that. Now, the Bolt is pretty good for commuter driving. If you have a commute that's maybe 30 miles, this is going to be a piece of cake to keep this thing in the reasonable range. If you have a very long commute, there's really not much you can do about it. It's just going to have to go down, and you'll lose some battery life with it. And I want to say one other thing about these things. There's some guys on the internet, they're saying, well, the manufacturers build in a fudge factor, so when you're at 100%, you're really not at 100%. The battery in a Chevy Bolt right now costs $15,000. That's a very expensive battery. Do you really think General Motors is going to build in that fudge factor just because they're nice? I don't think so. I don't think there's a fudge factor in there. There might be a 1 or 2% one, and that's about it. So I wouldn't expect that to be true. So just a couple of tips here to make that battery last longer if you can. I would not charge it to 100%. I would charge it to that 87% and time it so that I'm going to start and use that car right close after. And there's a lot of times when you come back, let's say you come back from whatever you used the car for that day, and it's still got 140 or 50 miles on it, there's no reason to charge it. I wouldn't charge it. I just let it go. You've got plenty of range to get wherever you want to go anyway. So anyway, that's my 2 bits on the care and feeding of the lithium-ion battery, and I hope it helps. That's it on this one.